Section 19 of the Book of Whales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mike Botes. The Book of Whales by Frank Evers Beddard. Chapter 9, Part 2. Hyperodon rostratum, Müller. This whale is a common northern species, and has been often recorded on our own coasts. The first recorded occurrence was at Maldon in Essex in 1717. It varies in colour from black in the young to light brown in the old animals. Very old animals turn a pale yellowish with white about them. The under surface is always greyish white. It will be noted that this change of colour is very similar to that which takes place in Beluga. The length seemed to vary between 20 and 30 feet, but Hunter described a skull, since missing, which apparently belonged to a still larger specimen, 30 or 40 feet long. Captain Gray noted that the tail of this whale, instead of being notched in the centre as is common among whales, was rounded, as is shown in the accompanying figure, Figure 30. This species is gregarious, going about in herds of from 4 to 10, rarely more, though Captain Gray has recorded a herd of 15. The animal is very unsuspicious, owing no doubt to the fact that it has been until of late but little hunted. The growing scarcity of the right whale has led to its being more actively pursued, and it has been proved that the oil derivable from the animal differs but little from that produced by the right whale. Another habit of this whale has proved its destruction. A herd will never leave a wounded comrade. Directly their company is dead they move away, but not until. They are extremely vigorous and hard to kill. A bottlenose cannot merely leap out of the water. That is a capability shared by many whales, but it always takes the water on returning to it head first, and can move its head while out of the water. When harpooned, this species has been known to stay under for 2 hours. The young, when born, seem to be about 10 feet long. At least a full-grown foetus of this size was cut out of a mother 29 feet long. It is rather an unusual fact, but it is the case, according to M. Bouvier, that in this species of whale the females are more numerous than the males. The same writer, in describing a specimen of this species, found that the massive forehead is not a character of the male only. M. Bouvier's example was a female, and had a well-developed pair of maxillary crests like those figured on page 223 of the adult male. It does not appear to be certain whether this specimen is to be relegated to the category of hens with cocks, combs, and other instances of the old female occasionally taking on the characters of the male or not. Another sexual difference, according to Fisher, is in the length of the pectoral fin. In the male it is 1/7, and in the female 1/12 of the body length. The Greenlandish name of this whale, Anarnak, expresses in a naive way the exceedingly purgative character of the fat of the Hyperodon. But although the fat has this unpleasant effect, the flesh, according to M. Bouvier, is eatable, if rather insipid. As is the case with other Ziphioid whales, Hyperodon rostratum has grooves upon the throat. But there is some dispute as to the number of these. One pair is the usual allowance, but Kukenthal found 4 in embryos studied by him. In an example of 20 feet long, Turner found these grooves to measure 19 inches. Another external character of importance is the presence or absence of hairs on the snout. Kukenthal saw what he believed to be indications of 4 hairs on each side, but a histological study did not give definite results. In connection with the fact that a distinct voice is possessed by Ziphioid whales, I may call attention to an observation by the Rev. G. Beardsworth that an example of Hyperodon sobbed. The third genus of this family, Berardius, may be thus defined: skull very symmetrical, nasals massive, forming its vertex, maxillae with rugose eminence, mesethmoid only partially ossified, teeth 2 on each side of lower jaw, pointed with apices directed forward. Vertebral formula: C7, D10, L12, Ca19 = 48. First 3 cervicals fused. Sternum of 5 pieces. 8 ribs two-headed. As this genus consists of but one species, which has been thoroughly studied, the main features in its description will be considered under the description of the species instead of here. It must be observed, however, that we do not at present know whether the rudimentary teeth present in the jaws of Mesoplodon are also present in Berardius. Attention should also be directed to the fact that a specimen in the Wellington Museum has but one tooth on each side of each mandible. Hence it is clearly rash to attempt to define the Ziphioid whales by the characters of their teeth alone. Berardius arnouxi, Duvernoy. As is unfortunately the case with other whales, but little is known of the appearance and habits of this the largest of the Ziphioids. Indeed, there are but 3 records of its occurrence, and one of these records cannot be regarded as applying without doubt to Berardius. The fullest account of its external appearance is given by Sir Julius von Haast. The creature reaches a length of 30 to 32 feet, the specimen examined by Haast being 30 feet 6 inches in total length. Its colour is described by him as of a velvety black, with the exception of the lower portion of the belly, which had a greyish tinge. This agrees exactly with the account of the first specimen, upon the examination of whose skull Duvernoy based the genus Berardius. The individual, however, was 32 feet in length. It has not been noticed whether the longitudinal throat plates present in other Ziphioid whales also exist in the species under discussion. This whale is described as bellowing like a bull. It will be remembered that Mesoplodon bidens was stated to low like a cow. But the most remarkable observation as to its economy was made by the wife of the fisherman who discovered the example referred to by Haast. She told her husband that each time he put the stick into the whale's mouth she could see several large teeth in front of its lower jaw, which, however, were not observed by anybody else, and the existence of which was only revealed when the skull was cleaned, when in front of the lower jaw two large triangular and movable teeth on each side became exposed. It thus seems that the Ziphioid whales, when defending themselves from their enemies or attacking their prey, have the power to protrude these four teeth at will. This extraordinary statement is supported by an anatomical fact discovered by Dr. Hector in another example of this species. He found that the teeth were embedded in a tough cartilaginous sac, which adheres loosely in the socket of the jaw, and is moved by a series of muscular bundles that elevate or depress it. Sir W. Flower justly remarks that these facts accord so little with anything hitherto known in mammalian anatomy that further observations on the subject are extremely desirable. Still, there is the statement of the woman, who would not be either prejudiced or informed in the matter, upon which her testimony is given. The whale feeds upon cuttlefish. A specimen 27 feet long produced about 240 gallons of oil and a fair amount of spermaceti. As there is but a single known species of this genus, Berardius, the osteological characters will be described under the present heading more in detail than was thought requisite to define the genus. These details are naturally taken from Sir W. Flower's memoir upon the whale, but I have myself verified most of them upon the actual skeleton in the Royal College of Surgeons Museum. A striking peculiarity of this whale is the small size of the head compared to the length of the vertebral column, and the large size of the individual vertebrae, a feature which is, however, also very noticeable in Mesoplodon. These proportions are curiously suggestive of some of the extinct aquatic Mosasaurians, as well as of some of the Dinosaurs. In this respect Berardius is at the opposite pole to the Greenland whale, where the head is so enormous as compared with the length of the vertebral column. The skull of Berardius is remarkably symmetrical for a toothed whale, as indeed is that of Mesoplodon, the nasals standing up erect and not sunk from the vertex of the skull. The maxillae are furnished with a strong oval tuberosity, like those of Hyperoodon, but not so strongly developed. Since in Hyperoodon those convexities increase in the males from youth to old age, it may be that the skeleton of Berardius, which Sir W. Flower has so carefully described, is of a female or young male. That is not a fully adult example is shown by the large persistence of the epiphysis not only in the vertebral column but elsewhere. The mesethmoid plate is short comparatively speaking, that is to say compared with what we find in Mesoplodon. The rami of the mandible are not ankylosed together. The vertebral column has the following formula: C7, D10, L12, Ca19 = 48. Of the cervical vertebrae, the atlas, axis, and the third vertebra are united by their bodies. The first two are also united by their neural arches. The remaining vertebrae are quite separate. Sir W. Flower observes that, apart from the fusion between these vertebrae, they are much more like those of the Beluga (Delphinapterus). The dorsal and lumbar vertebrae, especially the lumbar, contrast greatly with those of the Mesoplodon, by reason of the shortness and slenderness of the neural spines, as well as their greater inclination backwards. Of the 10 dorsal vertebrae, zygapophyses are only developed until between the 8th and the 9th. There are none between the 9th and the 10th. The lumbar vertebrae have their transverse process continuous with the lower transverse process of the 9th and the 9th dorsals, which bear the last two ribs in a perfectly straight line from beginning to end of the series, as in Mesoplodon. The lumbar vertebrae are distinctly keeled on the under surface. The first of the 19th caudal vertebra is to be distinguished from the last of the lumbar series, not only by the pair of facets on the hinder lower surface of the centrum for the chevron bones, but also by the absence of the keel spoken of as characteristic of the lumbars. There appear to be 9 chevron bones. Of the 10 pairs of ribs, the first articulates with the transverse process of the first dorsal vertebrae, and with the centrum of the last cervical. As in most other Ziphioids, cf. however Hyperoodon, there is a sudden break at the end of the series of ribs. The 9th and 10th have only the capitular head, which is attached to a lower transverse process springing from the centrum of the vertebrae and not exiting even in rudiment in the vertebrae in front. The sternum consists of 5 elements not connected by bone. Between the first 4 of these are spacious foramina in the dried skeleton, the edges of which are bevelled and smooth, so that it does not appear that ossification would have advanced further in this direction if the animal had lived to be older. There appear to be 6 pairs of cartilaginous sternal ribs. In the manus the scaphoid and the lunar are united, though a groove remains to mark their original distinctness. The cuneiform is partly united with the unciform. The magnum and the trapezoid are completely united. So far as is known, the pelvis consists of only one small bone, 5.8 inches in length. Berardius arnouxi is one of the few whales with a really limited distribution. It has only been taken, so far, on the north shores of New Zealand. Malm, however, has given some account of a fragmentary skull, to which the name B. vegae has been given, from Bering Straits, and there is also B. bairdi. The genus Ziphius has as characteristic features the skull with mesethmoid ossified. The nasals, conjoined, form an asymmetrical eminence upon the vertex. 2 teeth near symphysis of mandible, besides smaller functionless teeth. Vertebral formula: C7, D9 or 10, L11, Ca21 equals 49. The first 4 cervicals fused, or only 3 or 6. 7 ribs, 2-headed. Sternum consists of 5 pieces. Phalanges: 1, 1, 2, 5, 3, 5, 4, 5, 5, 2. Parker and Scott. Ziphius cavirostris, Cuvier, is the only species of the genus that can be certainly recognized. The following names, however, have been also given: Z. cathamiensis, Hector; Z. nova zelandiae, Haast; Z. indicus, van Beneden; Z. australis, Burmeister; Petrorhynchus capensis, Gray; Z. grebnetsky, Steiniger; Hyperodon semijunctus, Cope; H. dumeti, Gray; H. gervaisii, Duvernoy; Delphinus desmaresti, Risso; D. philippi, Coco; Ziphiorhynchus cryptodon, Burmeister, and apparently some others. The above formidable list of synonyms is mainly after van Beneden. Considering that the species has only been known from the year 1804, the synonyms have multiplied with perhaps greater rapidity and to a greater extent than those of almost any whale. It was in the year mentioned that a skull completely petrified in appearance was picked up upon the Mediterranean coast of France and regarded properly as the type of a new form, but incorrectly as a species now extinct. 46 years later, i.e. in 1850, a second skull was found, also on the Mediterranean shore. Since then Ziphius cavirostris has been found in many and the most distant parts of the world. The size of this whale varies much according to the measurements given. These naturally are from individuals of different ages. Van Beneden remarks that its size is a little inferior to that of Hyperodon. It is also to be distinguished from that northern whale by the larger size of the two teeth. The grooves on the throat are possibly a character by which differences may be ultimately detected between specimens of Ziphius which are at present referred to the same species. The bulk of accounts allow only two grooves meeting and forming a V-shaped mark upon the throat, but I quote later from another account and of a New Zealand species or specimen. Von Haast's Z. Nove Zeelandae was originally founded on an aged female, 26 feet in length, described as being bluish black on the upper portion of the body, white beneath, the upper portion being marked with numerous oval spots 2 to 3 inches across, like the skin of a leopard. Two additional specimens acquired later showed that the animal possesses a dorsal fin, which was doubted at first. One of these was a young female, 19 feet in length, the other of the same sex and 21 feet in length. The colour is the exact reverse of that first described, being white above and black beneath. The throat has a single fold on each side, and the two teeth stood out half an inch beyond the gums. No smaller teeth were detected. In the larger specimen the teeth were worn down and could not be felt, but were revealed by incisions. The first animal was scored by numerous lacerations, due apparently to fighting among themselves or to attacks from the males. The spots are also healed wounds. Messrs. Scott and Parker have described and figured a young Ziphius from New Zealand, which differs in several particulars from those just referred to. but they have, perhaps wisely, abstained from giving it a name. The animal, a young female, was 16 feet long, all but an inch, purple black on the back, brown on the side of the head, and white beneath to as far back as the genital orifice, whence it was brown. The throat is grooved by 3 grooves on each side. The middle of the caudal fin is convex, as in Hyperoodon and Mesoplodon. See Figure 31. It will be noted that the colour and grooves on the throat differ from those of Z. Nove Zelandiae, but there are no salient differences in the osteology. End of section 19. Recording by Mike Botez. Section 20 of The Book of Whales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mike Botez. The Book of Whales by Frank Evers Beddard. Chapter 10, Part 1. The Dolphins. Family Delphinidae. The family Delphinidae may be thus defined: of small to moderate size. Teeth as a rule numerous and in both jaws. Anterior ribs 5 to 8, two-headed. Posterior with tuberculum only. Sternal ribs ossified. Palatines meeting for a greater or less extent in the middle line. This family of whales comprises, as the name denotes, those Cetacea which are commonly known as dolphins and porpoises. There are no giants among the Delphinidae, save only Orca, the killer whale, which may grow to a length of over 20 feet. But nothing of a colossal size is attained to by any number of the family Delphinidae. The skull of all these whales is characterized by the form of the lacrimal bone, which is not distinct from the malar, and consists of a thicker piece, which ends abruptly in a thin bar of bone articulating behind with the squamosal. This single bone may contain the elements of the 2 distinct ossifications of other Cetacea. The skull is asymmetrical, as in other Odontocetes, but there is no such highly raised crest behind the nares as in the Ziphiids or sperm whales. The symphysis of the mandibles is of limited extent, never exceeding 1/3 of the ramus. The most salient difference, perhaps, which the Delphinidae display from most other whales is the presence of numerous functional teeth in both jaws. It is only the primitive Platanistidae that show agreement with them in this. In Beluga the teeth show a commencing reduction, and this culminates in the Narwhal, where the well known tusk only, sometimes double, is left. The vertebral column is often composed of very numerous vertebrae, as many as 90 or so having been recorded. On the other hand, it is by no means infrequently short, so that no family definition can be arrived at from a statement of these numbers. But all dolphins agree in the mode of articulation of the ribs. At first they are double headed, afterwards the tuberculum only is left. Furthermore, the sternal ribs are ossified. The Delphinidae enumerated in Dr. Gray's catalogues amount to over 100 in number, and even so careful as a worker as Mr. True enumerates and defines no less than 50. Many of these names will, however, ultimately have to be weeded out from the list which they encumber. Every one nowadays will agree with Sir William Flower when he observes that it is necessary to abandon the old assumption upon which so many new species were founded, which limited the area of each species to a small and circumscribed portion of the ocean, and placed imaginary barriers to its distribution where none really existed. It is this perversity which has confounded the whole history of whales, and especially of that family which is now under consideration. Like other animals, too, the dolphins show some alterations in the structure as they pass from immaturity to old age. And these alterations have to be taken very careful account of, as they relate to features which have been made use of for specific and even generic definition by Dr. Gray and others. A number of these anatomical points are brought together by Sir W. Flower in his essay upon the generic subdivisions of the dolphins. In the first place, the length and width of the beak alters with advancing years, and it becomes longer and wider in proportion to the rest of the skull in perfectly adult animals. Another character which is commonly made use of in the discrimination of species is the number and size of the teeth. It is in the first place hard to count accurately the teeth in a given skull. The smaller ones at the ends of the series are sometimes lost or concealed in the gum. They become larger too with growth, and more widely separated owing to the growth of the beak already referred to. As both the numbers and size of the teeth are used, and in many cases apparently quite properly used, in the discrimination of species, it is desirable to be cautious. In the third place, sexual differences exist, which, if wrongly interpreted, might lead to the placing of the two sexes in different species, when, as has been more than once the case, a species is founded upon a single individual, even upon a single skull or part of a skull. Fourthly, the distribution and depths of the colours of these Cetaceans are apt to show differences not merely of age, but sheer variations, which do not always depend upon differing age. The Beluga, for example, gets paler with age. The arrangement of the bars of colours upon the common dolphin (Delphinus delphis) seems to differ to a considerable extent. These observations obviously apply to other whales besides the Delphinidae, to which they are specifically applied here. Immaturity especially has been made the basis of specific and even generic distinction. But they are particularly applied to the dolphins by Sir W. Flower, since the classification and limits of the species in that group are more difficult owing to their larger numbers. In spite, however, of the numerous points in which variations of sex or age may occur, and tend to obscure the possibility of accurately dividing up the family, a considerable number of definite types can be recognised which may fairly be termed generic. To go further than this is not so easy. The most recent arrangement of the dolphins is that of Mr. True, who attempts to distinguish the species into which the genera allowed by Sir W. Flower can be divided. The admitted genera of dolphins are some 19. These will be allowed here. Seeing that there are so many types to which generic rank should perhaps be allowed, it becomes a matter of importance to inquire how far they can be grouped together. whether in fact any practical subdivision of the family into larger divisions than genera can be arrived at. Several authors are in favour of separating the Beluga and the Narwhal of the north into such a subfamily. There is no doubt that in more than one character these two northern forms approach each other to differ from the remaining forms. The cervical vertebrae are never fused, even in perfectly adult animals, without epiphysis to the vertebrae. In other dolphins more or fewer are fused. The pterygoid bones are somewhat rudimentary, not having the involuted cavity below, which is the character of other dolphins. These two bones, moreover, are not merely widely separated, which is found in other dolphins, but are bent towards each other posteriorly, and also articulate outwards with the squamosals, as Mr. True has pointed out. This last character is found in Platanista, and it will be borne in mind that the last mentioned family is characterized, among other facts, by the freedom of the cervical vertebrae. Delphinapterus further agrees with Platanista in having a distinct neck. The reduction of the teeth culminating in monodon is, however, met with in Grampus and Globicephalus. Finally, a larger number of ribs, 8, than in any others, 7 at most, have both capitulum and tuberculum. In the following account of the dolphins I shall for the most part admit Mr. True's species, and of course species subsequently described where there are salient characters. Colour, exact number of teeth, phalanges, and vertebrae are so liable to variation and to wrong enumeration, owing to defective skeletons, that great care will have to be exercised. We will commence with the genus Delphinapterus, which has 8 to 10 teeth of moderate size, occupying anterior part of jaws only. Vertebrae: C7, D11, L9, Ca23 = 50. All cervicals are free. 8 first ribs two-headed. 4 reach the sternum. Pterygoids widely apart, converging towards extremity but not meeting. Phalanges: 1, 1, 2, 6, 7, 3, 4 to 5, 4, 3 to 4, 5, 3 to 4. In embryo: 3, 9, 7, 6, 6. No dorsal fin. No hairs on the face. Both Sir W. Flower and Mr. True concur in allowing but one species of white whale, which will therefore have the following synonymy: Delphinapterus leucas, Pallas; Delphinapterus beluga, Lacépède; Delphinus albicans, Fabricius; Beluga catodon, Gray; Catodon sibbaldii, Fleming; Beluga borealis, Lesson; Delphinus canadensis, Desmarais; D. kingi, Gray; B. rhinodon, Cope; B. declivis, Cope; B. augustata, Cope; B. concreta, Cope. The white whale is entirely northern in range. The alleged species, D. kingi, was asserted to come from the Australian shores, but the locality requires confirmation. It is so exclusively Arctic in range that there are but a few certain records of the occurrence of this species on the shores of England, though several specimens have been recorded from Scotland, and the species occurs off the eastern coasts of North America. It reaches a length of 16 to 20 feet. This whale is remarkable for its white colour. Its name, beluga, from the Russian, signifies white, which is, however, only characteristic of the full grown animals. The young is blackish, the older whale is mottled, and finally a yellowish hue is arrived at, which is gradually blanched to pure white. Though the whale is marine, it will ascend rivers, mainly, it is said, in pursuit of salmon. It has been said to ascend the Yukon River for a distance of 700 miles. The name Delphinopterus, applied to this whale, signifies the peculiarity of the absence of the dorsal fin, in which it resembles its undoubted ally the narwhal, and the more distant Neomeris. It is a singular fact that these whales, unlike many Cetacea, have a distinct voice, and their vocal capabilities have earned for them the name of sea canary. The Beluga lives in companies. They feed upon fish, cephalopods, and Crustacea. These they pursue at great depths in the ocean. It is said that the sand which is sometimes found in the stomach is used as ballast to enable the creature to remain below water with greater facility. But, as already mentioned in the case of the Balaenoptera rostrata, it seems much more likely that the sand is engulfed accidentally along with their prey. The various aliases of the one polar white whale are partly due to the occasional fusion of the cervical vertebrae, the presence of an additional rib, and a few other points, which are really within the limits of individual variation. The Beluga has a very distinct neck, a rarity among whales, but a character of Platanista and Inia, to which genera indeed the freedom from each other of the cervical vertebrae give it an additional resemblance. A curious error, but made in good faith, was perpetrated in 1748 with regard to the systematic position of this white fish. Anderson described a specimen which had lost the teeth of the upper jaw and was in consequence only dentate below, as a white cachalot. Lacépède added, apparently solely for the sake of a better filled page, "On ne peut guère douter que ces cétacés ne fournissaient de l'adipocire, et peut-être dont-ils aussi de l'ambre gris." It seems a belated procedure to attack Lacépède, but he has acquired so big a reputation as an historian of the Cetacea that it is perhaps permissible to quote M. Fisher's remark that "the scientific element is not conspicuous" in his book. The Narwhal genus, Monodon, is extremely very unlike the last genus, though they possess many structural points in common. It has but one tooth (rarely two) in maxilla, which has the form of a long tusk. In female this is rudimentary. Vertebrae: C. 7, D. 11, L. 6, Ca. 26 = 50. 8 ribs, two-headed. 4 reach to sternum. Pterygoids, as in Delphinopterus. No dorsal fin, no hairs. Phalanges: 1, 2, 2, 6, 3, 5, 4, 3, 5, 3. Embryo: 2, 9, 7, 5, 4. This genus is obviously characterized by the singular spirally twisted tusk of the male, which is simply an abnormally enlarged maxillary tooth. Occasionally two teeth are fully developed, one in each jaw. There is a skeleton in the British Museum which shows this peculiarity. That skeleton has also a small 12th rib in addition to the normal 11. Of these ribs the first 8 are double headed. The same is the case in the Beluga, and, as also in the last mentioned genus, 4 sternal ribs exist. Though the Narwhal has no dorsal fin, there is a raised ridge along the back an inch in height. There is but one species, Monodon monoceros lineus. M. microcephalus, Desmarais. M. andersonianus, Id. Narwhalus vulgaris, Lacepede. Tachyneses megacephalus, Brooks, are some of the synonyms which really all refer to the one species. The Narwhal, or sea unicorn, mighty Monoceros, with immeasured tails, is a whale familiar to everybody, at least by name and appearance, as depicted in pictures. The creature grows to a length of about 15 feet. Such an individual would have a horn of some 7 feet. But the length, as with other whales, has been grossly exaggerated 60 feet. The colour is darker above, paler below, both tints speckled in a leopardine fashion. But old animals seem to lose this character, and to become quite white. It is a purely Arctic animal, and Mr. Lydekker records only 3 examples thrown up on our shores. Another, however, has been since recorded by Mr. Christie. The tusk of the Narwhal, van Beneden tells us, was at first, and after all naturally, thought to belong to a terrestrial creature. It is from this idea that the notion of the unicorn with the form of a horse has doubtless sprung. So lately as 1655, however, Wormius announced the real nature of this apparent freak of nature. The use of the horn or tusk to its possessor has been much discussed. As it is a sexual character, the most obvious use would seem to be in the battles of the males with the toothless females. Scoresby observed that shoals of these animals often consisted entirely of males. These animals played with their horns, crossing them with each other as in fencing. This is, of course, comparable to the use of other weapons in play by other animals, such as the teeth of young dogs, the claws of the cat, etc., etc. Another suggestion is that the long and strong weapon is useful for the purpose of breaking the thick ice of the polar regions, so that the whale can rise and breathe. A third suggestion is also due to Scoresby. He captured and dissected a narwhal which had in his stomach, beside beaks and cuttlefish, so common a food of whales, a large skate. Now an active skate which moreover had a diameter greater than that of the whale's mouth, could hardly, thought Scoresby, have been caught alive by its devourer. He suggests, indeed, that with this tusk the skate was first pierced and killed, and then swallowed. An elaboration of this story is to be found in writings earlier than the two books of Scoresby. Lacépède, quoting from others, credits the narwhal with a more ingenious use of the tusk. The animal threads its prey upon the tusk, and gradually works it down like a conjurer with a ball upon a string, until the fish can be seized with its lips and swallowed. These three views are presented for the consideration of the reader. As to uses with which their possessor has no concern, the tusk was employed in Europe in the past and in China today as a drug. At Rosenborg is a throne entirely made of those tusks, and Captain Scoresby, Mr. R. Brown tells us, had a bed made from the same material. The genus Phocena, true porpoises, have the teeth 16 to 26 in number, their crowns compressed, lobed, pterygoids slightly developed and far apart, premaxillae with bosses in front of nares. Vertebrae 64 to 98 in number. Phalanges 1, 2 to 3, 2, 7 to 10, 3, 6 to 8, 4, 3 to 5, 5, 1 to 3. Dorsal fin with a row of tubercles along its posterior margin. Of well-established species there would seem to be three, which are the following: Phocena communis, Lesson. The common porpoise may be thus distinguished from other members of the genus Phocena. Length 5½ feet. No beak. Dorsal fin triangular. Anterior margin straight. Pectoral fins ovate. Teeth 26. Vertebrae C7, D12, 13, 14, L14, 15, CA 30 to 33 equals 64 to 68. First 6 cervicals fused. Young with 2 to 4 hairs. The common porpoise is a northern form, being found in both Atlantic and Pacific. It reaches a length of 5 to 6 feet and is generally blackish, but whiter on the belly. The name of this dolphin has been variously given as porkpice, porpice, porpes, porpoise, and porpoise. The meaning of the word being especially plain from the first instance, it is of course big fish, a suggestion of the ungulate affinities of whales which has been commended by naturalists. It is a gregarious whale and often ascends rivers. It has been met with in the Seine, at Paris for example. It is the commonest species of our seas. The porpoise was once esteemed a delicacy in this country, as are other Cetaceans in other lands at the present day. It formed a royal dish even so recently as the times of Henry VIII. The sauce recommended by Dr. Caius for this fish was made of crumbs of fine bread, vinegar, and sugar. Considered to be a fish, it was allowed to be eaten on fast days. The porpoise, like the stormy petrel, has had the reputation of presaging foul weather. Wilsford, I quote from Bacon, in Nature's Secrets, remarks: "Porpoises or sea hogs, when observed to sport and chase one another about ships, expect then some stormy weather." To the same effect writes Ravenscroft in Canterbury Guests, or "A bargain broke, my heart begins to leap and play like a porpoise before a storm." The French word marsouin, applied to the porpoise, is said to be derived from a corruption of the German Meerschwein, but Scaliger's derivation from marinum suem seems to be more likely. Phocena tuberculifera was founded by Dr. Gray upon an example which was exhibited for a short time in the Zoological Society's garden. In this individual the doctor noticed the spiny margin to the fin, which has frequently escaped notice in other porpoises, and hence thought that there were two species, one with and one without these spines. It is held by Mr. True that P. brachisium, P. vomerina, and P. lineata, all named by the late Professor Cope, are at most varieties of the common porpoise. But Phocena spinipinnis of Burmeister is distinct. It has a length of 5 feet and 4 inches, slight beak, dorsal fin narrow, low, with concave anterior margin, pectoral fins falcate, end of body ridged above and below, teeth 16. This porpoise seems to be quite distinct. The specimen upon which the description of Burmeister was based was captured near the mouth of the Rio de la Plata. It is entirely black, but the most remarkable character which distinguishes it from P. communis, and at the same time allies it to the next species, is the existence of a long, low ridge on both sides of the body near to the tail. This seems to be a survival of the low dorsal ridge of the embryo (see page 14), and the existence of the two ridges gives some colour to older assertions that whales may possess two dorsal fins and an anal fin like the fish. The tubercles on the fin, as well as the peculiar shape of the latter, distinguish the species. They are more numerous and in more rows on the back as well as on the fin itself. Phocena dallei, True, is thus defined: length 6 feet, no beak, dorsal fin high and falcate, pectorals oval, body ridged above and below at end, teeth 23 to 27, vertebrae C7, D14, 15, L27, Ca 49 equals 97 or 98. The most salient difference of this from P. communis is the extraordinarily long vertebral column, formed mainly by the large development of the lumbar region. All the cervicals are united. It is a Pacific species. End of section 20. Recording by Mike Botez. Section 21 of the Book of Whales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mike Botez. The Book of Whales by Frank Evers Bedard. Chapter 10, Part 2. The genus Neomeris is to be characterized by the absence of a dorsal fin and the number of teeth, 18 to 26. The skull characters are as in Phocena. Vertebrae: D13, L12, C29 = 63. This genus has been already referred to on account of the rows of tubercles which stud the back in the place of the absent dorsal fin. It is a genus which is barely to be distinguished from Phocena according to most authorities. Of the cervical vertebrae the last 5 are free. 7 ribs are two-headed. The sternum is short and broad, and has 4 pairs of ribs attached to it. There is but one species, Neomeris phocenides, Cuvier. It is unnecessary to give a definition of this species, as the principal characters have been already given in the description of the genus. Its colour is entirely black, save for the purplish red patch on the upper lip and one on the throat. This porpoise is about 4 feet long, and inhabits the seas of India, Cape of Good Hope, and Japan. Mr. True thinks that a species, noted merely from a native drawing, and described as Delphinapterus Molagan by Sir Richard Owen, is the same. Molagan is of course a native name for the porpoise. Neomeris curaciensis, Murray, is but a synonym. Mr. Murray, the describer of this last, remarks that it has 18 teeth on each side of each jaw, besides 2 or 3 which were scarcely visible through the gums, and situated out of the line of the other teeth in front of the jaws. In shape these teeth are quite unlike the rest, being conical instead of flattened or compressed. May this possibly be compared to the rudimentary teeth of Ziphioids? In the stomach of this whale prawns of the genus Peneus were found. The genus Delphinus has the teeth small and numerous, 47 to 65 in number. Vertebrae: C7, D14, 15, L21, 22, Ca 30, 32 = 73 or 76. Atlas and axis fused, the rest free. Palatal border of maxillaries deeply grooved. Phalanges: 1, 2, or 3. 2, 8 or 9. 3, 5 to 7. 4, 2 to 4. 5, 1 or 2. Fins falcate. Beak distinct and long. This genus, which embraces not more than 3 ascertained species, may be termed the true dolphins. They have a long beak, and are to be distinguished from all other Delphinidae by the deep grooves on the palatal surfaces of the maxillaries, producing thus a separation between the alveolar border and a raised median ridge. Though there are not more than 3 ascertained species, according to Mr. True, an immense number of names have been given. The common dolphin, Delphinus delphis, appears to be identical with animals that have received the following names: D. major, D. fulvofasciatus, D. forsteri, D. janira, D. pomegra, D. berdi, D. mori, D. walkeri, D. Nove Zelandiae, D. albimanus, D. marginatus, D. fuscus, D. suburbianus, D. variegatus, D. balteatus, D. algerienis, D. moscatus. This lengthy list is the result of giving a new name to a dolphin captured or observed in a fresh locality. We have simply to do with a cetacean of exceedingly wide range, or as Lacépède, who delighted more in symmetrical sentences than in a plain record of cold fact, observed. It is met with in the favourable climes of the temperate zones, under the burning firmament of the equatorial seas, and in the horrible valleys which separate the enormous mountains of ice which time builds upon the surface of the polar ocean as so many funeral monuments to Nature who is there expiring. Delphinus delphis linnaeus. Length 7 feet 5 inches. Form slender. Forehead sloping gradually. Dorsal fin narrow. Teeth 46 to 50. Figure 32. This is the dolphin par excellence, the dolphin of the ancients. It is common among other places in the Mediterranean, hence its frequent observation. But it is perhaps hardly necessary to mention the fact it has been often confounded with the fish Coryphena. Hence the legends as to its dying colours and to many of its more purely fish-like attributes. On the other hand, regarding it as a fish, the ancients were impressed by its unfish-like intelligence. Upon this confusion were doubtless based the legend of Arion and the dolphin and other similar stories. Scaliger speaks of it as nobilissimus cetaceorum. As a matter of fact, the colours of this animal are unusually variegated for a cetacean, and liable to much variation; hence the multitude of species. The best figure illustrating these hues is contained in a memoir by Sir William Flower. The usual black of the dorsal and white of the ventral surface is supplemented by two lateral areas of a fulvous or greyish tinge. A black or greenish band extends from the lower jaw to the base of the pectoral fin. There is a ring of black round the eye. One or two bands of greyish or greenish traverse the light colour of the lower part of the sides. The sharply marked off beak of the dolphin, which it shares of course with many other Delphinidae, has given rise to such vernacular names as bec d'oie, and the form of the head, often repeated in ancient boats, shows that perhaps a hint as to the proper form of a boat was derived from this swift creature. The ancients appear to have confused, to some extent, dolphins and sharks, for they speak of the mouth of the former being ventral in position, and say that the animal is obliged to turn upon its back before it can swallow its prey. Pliny, who always mixed up the fact and fiction in one inextricable tangle, added to this imaginary portrait the further detail that the dolphin was armed with a long and spiny fin, with which it could successfully attack other creatures, possibly a confusion with the long and narrow dorsal fin of Orca. Its movements are rapid. It has been called the arrow of the sea, and a proverb has emphasized this. Of those who desire something impossible, it is said that they wish to catch a dolphin by the tail. The curved form in which the conventional dolphin of heraldry is exhibited is an indication of the frequency with which this cetacean will leap out of the water. Under these circumstances the body is naturally arched. On coins, medals, and coats of arms of Mediterranean countries and cities the dolphin takes the place that the Biscayan whale does along the northern shores of Spain. A dolphin forms the arms of the eldest son of the King of France, who was styled in consequence Dauphin. This seems to be a curious reversal of the canting crest. The Dauphin took the style from the arms of Dauphiné in other cases, e.g. Lucis = pike, the Lucies. The arms were from the name of the individual. So many tales dating from antiquity have been told concerning the intelligence and usefulness to man of the dolphin, that the following modern one may be not without interest. In Moreton Bay, relates Mr. Fairholme, the natives used to aid the men in the capture of mullet, a kind of a porpoise. When a shoal of fish come into the bay, the natives with their spears make a peculiar splashing in the water. Whether the porpoises really understand this as a signal or think it is a fish, it is difficult to determine, but the result is always the same. They at once come in towards, driving the mullet before them. The relater of this incident thinks that the whales really understand and assist. The dolphin, when born, is one of those species which have a few hairs, 5 to 7 have been counted on each side, forming the moustache. Delphinus longirostris, Cuvier, may be a distinct form. It is thus defined: teeth 58 to 65, rostrum very elongated, about 67.9% of whole length of the skull. This species is only to be defined by the above characters, and its external characters are unknown. It is therefore not very satisfactory, but is retained in deference to Mr. True's researches. Mr. True, identical with Gray's Delphinus capensis, it comes from Malabar. The third and last species, Delphinus roseventris, Wagner, is in length barely 4 feet. Form stout. Forehead abruptly sloping. Beak long. Dorsal fin broad. Teeth 48. The genus Prodelphinus is carefully to be distinguished from Delphinus. It has a distinct beak. Dorsal and pectoral fins falcate. Vertebrae C7, D14 or 15, L22, 19 or 21. CA 29 to 38 equals 69 to 81. Pterygoids in contact. Phalanges 1, 2, 2, 9, 3, 7, 4, 3, 5, 1. Of this genus Mr. True remarks: "The chief character which has been brought forward as separating it from Delphinus is a negative one, the absence of deep lateral palatine grooves. It also comes near to Tursio. The main feature here which distinguish the two genera are the fewer teeth and more numerous vertebrae. The three genera are quite close together. Some 23 species have been assigned to this genus, but these may be reduced, according to Mr. True, to 8. It is pretty well universally distributed. There seems to be nothing of interest to record in the habits of these dolphins. Prodelphinus plagiodon, Cope, is 7 feet in length. Dorsal fin falcate. Colour spotted. Teeth 37. Vertebrae 69, of which 14 dorsal. This dolphin comes from the Atlantic coasts of North America and from the Gulf of Mexico. Prodelphinus malayanus, Lesson. Length about 7 feet. Colour uniform ashy. Teeth 39. There is too little either to identify with the genus Prodelphinus or to differentiate it as a species. The skull was not described by the original describer of the species, but by Schlegel. That it is with great hesitation that it is here included. It is an East Indian species. Prodelphinus attenuatus, Gray. Colour dark above, ashy grey below. Teeth 35 to 44. Vertebrae 81, of which 15 dorsal. The very large number of vertebrae distinguish this species so far as is known. It appears to be identical with the following three species: Delphinus pseudodelphis, Wigman; Stenocapensis, Gray; Clymene punctata, ID. It is widely distributed: Cape Horn, Cape of Good Hope, Bay of Bengal, North Atlantic. Prodelphinus ceruleo albus, Mayen, has the dorsal fins not deeply emarginate. 14 dorsal vertebrae. Teeth 50. Habited South America. This dolphin has the lateral strip, which is found in many of the species of Prodelphinus. Prodelphinus euphrosyne, Gray, with probable synonyms: D. styx, Gray; D. tethios, Gervais; D. marginatus, Duvernoy; Tursio dorsides, Gray; Clymene dorides, Gray; Clymenia euphrosynoides, ID. has a length of about 8 feet. Dorsal fin high and falcate. Pectoral fins small. Vertebrae 76. 15 dorsals. Teeth 45. Like the preceding species, this has a long, narrow black stripe proceeding from the eye to the vent, with a branch given off to the pectoral fin and another behind it. Habitat Europe to South Africa. Prodelphinus lateralis, Peel. This species, of which the name was altered to Lagenorhynchus in the second edition of the Mammalia of the U.S. Exploring Expedition, may be thus defined from the imperfect existing knowledge of it: length 7 feet 6 inches, form stout, snout small, teeth 41. Habitat Pacific. Latitude 13 degrees, longitude 161 degrees. It seems to be mainly the lateral black line which justifies the inclusion of this species in the present genus, for its cranial characters are not known. Of Prodelphinus frenatus, F. Cuvier, not a great deal is to be said. It is in length up to 6 feet. Teeth 38. Vertebrae 70. 14 dorsals. Atlantic and Indian Oceans. The following reputed species seem to be in all probability synonyms: D. frontalis, Dussumier. D. doris, Gray. D. clymene, Gray. Clymenia normalis, Gray. D. alope, Gray. D. microps, Gray. D. stenorhynchus, Gray, are probably not allied species but merely synonyms. The only two of the names given in the list of synonyms which applies to anything more than a skull is D. frontalis and D. frenatus, which has the characteristic dark band from the angle of mouth to pectoral limb. Prodelphinus longirostris, Gray. Length nearly 7 feet. Vertebrae 73, 14 dorsals. Teeth 52. Palate with traces of lateral groove. Cf. Delphinus. Rostrum very long. Japan, Malabar, Cape, coast of Brazil, Cape Horn, Galapagos, and Australia. Genus Lagenorhynchus. This genus may be defined in the following terms: head with short, not very distinct beak; dorsal and pectoral fins falcate; teeth small, 22 to 45 in number on each jaw; vertebrae 73 to 92; pterygoid bones in contact or separate; rostrum not exceeding or scarcely exceeding length of cranium. This genus is another to which quite a large number of species have been referred. But a number of them are barely definable, and it is a difficult, at present perhaps impossible, task to discriminate them with accuracy. I give some description here of nearly all the species that are allowed by True, a number, be it observed, in excess of the probable species of Sir William Flower's enumeration. In addition to the features of the genus mentioned in its definition, Lagenorhynchus is characterized by the length of the neural and transverse processes of the lumbar vertebrae. Mr. True also comments upon the presence of an area of bright colour, rather high up on the side between the dorsal fin and the flukes, as a mark of Lagenorhynchus. It is, according to the last mentioned observer, nearest to Prodelphinus, Clymenia. The first species of the genus Lagenorhynchus obscurus, Gray, has the external form as in Acutus, but beak not distinctly marked off. Teeth 30 to 32. Pterygoids in contact. Length 5 feet 6 inches. This species is chiefly to be distinguished by the absence of a distinct marked off beak. This gives to the dolphin an appearance not at all like that of other species of the genus, and it has indeed been referred to Prodelphinus. But, as already mentioned, these two genera are not very far apart. It is a southern form. Lagenorhynchus thiccolia, also named by Gray, is known from a single skull only. Its chief feature is the large number of teeth, 45, and it is on these grounds that it has been admitted to specific rank. In Lagenorhynchus superciliosus, Schlegel, the teeth are 30. Vertebrae C7, D13, L20, Ca 33 equals 73. Pterygoids in contact. This species from the Cape of Good Hope is only known by a skeleton. Lagenorhynchus fitzroyi, Waterhouse. equals D. cruciger, Coy and Gaimard. L. clanculus, Gray, has a length of 5 to 6 feet. Beak short. Dorsal fin large. Teeth 28. Pterygoids in contact. Whether the above synonyms relate to one and the same species is far from a certainty. Dr. Gray, indeed, adds obscurus and superciliosus to the list. But in any case all the forms mentioned in the list are from the shores of Patagonia and from the Southern Ocean. They are also much patched with white and have, according to illustrations, much the same external appearance. As mentioned before, the discrimination of the different species of dolphins is a task beyond the capacities of those who have not the entire museums of the world at their command. The next species, Lagenorhynchus electra of Gray, has only 23 teeth in each jaw. Skull massive. Rostrum broad, long, and flat. Mesethmoid much ossified and visible superiorly. The four following names are probably to be regarded as synonyms: L. asia, Gray; Electra obtusa, Id.; Delphinus fusiformis, Owen; Phocenna pectoralis, Peale. Of P. pectoralis only is the external form known. This species appears to differ from all other members of the genus by the amount of ossification in the mesethmoid, and by its appearance on the dorsal surface of the skull. The species is from the Indian Ocean and the tropical Pacific. The two next species are British and can be easily separated. Lagenorhynchus albirostris, Gray, has a length of 9 feet. Teeth 26. Vertebrae C7, D15 or 16, L23 or 24, Ca43 or 45, equals 88 or 92. 5 ribs, rich sternum, 6 or 7 two-headed. Pterygoids in contact. This species occurs on our own coasts, and is, so far as is known, purely a northern species. It appears that the winter is passed in the more temperate regions of the north, and the summer in the Arctic regions. The dolphin goes about in large bands, and is a fish eater in the main. Lagenorhynchus acutus, Gray; Delphinus eschrichti, Schlegel; D. leucopleurus, Rush. Length 8 feet. Dorsal fin high. Beak small. Teeth 35 to 37. Vertebrae C7, D14 and 15, L18 to 22, Ca 38 to 41, equals 78 to 82. Pterygoids in contact. This also is a northern species. It occurs in vast herds of as many as 1,500 individuals on the coast of Norway. It is then in pursuit of the herrings. A skeleton in the British Museum has the 4 last cervicals free. 6 of the ribs are two-headed, but as few as 5 and as many as 7 may be so. Lagenorhynchus obliquidens, Gill, may be distinguished in the following terms: length 7 feet some inches, colour greenish black above, with lateral broad longitudinal stripes of white grey and dull black, white below. Teeth 31. Vertebrae C7, D13, L24, Ca 30 equals 74. Pterygoids not in contact, divergent posteriorly. This is a North Pacific species of exceeding activity. It congregates in herds of many hundreds, tumbling over the surface of the sea, or making arching leaps, plunging again on the same curve, or darting high and falling diagonally sideways upon the water with a spiteful splash, accompanied by a report that may be heard at some distance. When a brisk breeze is blowing, they frequently play about the bow of a ship, going at her utmost speed, darting across the cut water and shooting ahead, or circling around the vessel, apparently sporting at ease. These porpoises feed upon small fish, and, says Scammon, act up to their character of the sea swine, filling themselves to repletion. As with other dolphins, these animals will collect in calm weather in immense herds, huddled together on the surface of the water. Finally, Dr. Moreno has described Lagenorhynchus floweri from the Bay of Santa Cruz. It is 1 metre and 29 long, with nearly the whole of the middle part of the body white. The rest is black. The teeth are 20. End of section 21. Recording by Mike Botez. Section 22 of The Book of Whales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mike Botez. The Book of Whales by Frank Evers Beddard. Chapter 10, Part 3. The genus Sotalia has teeth tolerably large, 26 to 35 in number, in each jaw. Vertebrae C7, D11, 12, L 10 to 14, C 22 equals 51 to 55 in all. The pterygoids are separate. There are 3 elements in the sternum, and there are 5 to 7 pairs of sternal ribs. The number of phalanges in the digits is as follows: 1, 0, 2, 6, 3, 5, 4, 2, 5, 1. Beak distinct. The manus is long, falcate or oval. The dorsal fin is falcate. Of this genus there are some 5 or 6 species. The exact number cannot be fixed at present. They are not large dolphins. 8 or 9 feet may be regarded as the greatest length attained to. The remarkable fact about the dolphins of this genus is their usually pale coloration. Thus S. sinensis is milky white with pinkish fins. The upper part of the body in S. pallida is yellowish white, the under surface white. S. plumbea is a uniform plumbeous grey. A good many of the species, moreover, are found in rivers and estuaries. In the Amazons and other streams of South America are 2 recognized species and 3 more doubtful ones. S. sinensis lives in several rivers of China. On the other hand, there are others which are as purely marine in habit. The most remarkable species of the genus is the supposed vegetarian Sotalia thus from Cameroon River, West Africa. Sotalia sinensis is in colour milky white, with pinkish fins. Teeth 32. Vertebrae D12, L10, Ca 22 = 51. This species, from the harbour of Amoy and the Canton River, was originally mentioned by Osbeck, a pupil of Linnaeus, who travelled to China in a merchant vessel in 1751. Its osteology has been fully described by Sir William Flower in the memoir cited below. As neither Osbeck, the discoverer, nor F. Cuvier, nor Desmarest at all described the species, its specific name should be attributed to Flower. Osbeck, indeed, not understanding, as Cuvier observed, the principles of his master and attaching himself exclusively, as did many others, to increasing the catalogue which Linnaeus had published, simply defined this dolphin, like the common dolphin but entirely of a bright white. It is not, therefore, surprising that F. Cuvier included this form among the dolphins, dont l'existence comme espèce est douteuse. Sotalia plumbea of Cuvier has a colour of uniform plumbeous grey, white on lower jaw. Teeth 37 to 39. This species is one of the marine forms coming from the Malabar coast. Its external characters have been described by M. Dussumier, who observes that the young have much more white about them than the adults, a reversal of the condition of colour which characterise, for example, the Beluga. This species is said to be slower in its movements than many dolphins. It reaches 8 feet in length. Sotalia gedamu, Owen, is in colour dark plumbeous grey, below pinkish ashy grey, with a few darker blotches. Teeth 26. Rostrum not so long as in last 2 species. This species, known only from a sketch of its shape and colour, and from the skull, is named by the fishermen of Vizagapatam Gedamu, whence its specific name. Also described by Owen is Sotalia lentiginosa, of a bluish cinereous colour, freckled with dark brown. Fins smaller than in S. gedamu. Teeth 33 to 34. This species, from the same locality as the last, is regarded by Flower as doubtfully distinct. True, however, affirms the correctness of Sir R. Owen in giving it a separate name, and we shall follow him. Dr. Blanford would refer this and the last species, under the name of S. perniger, to the genus Steno (Fig. 34). In addition to the species of Sotalia enumerated, there are a number of forms existing in the rivers of South America, to which, at any rate, 5 names have been given. But what differences separate S. guianensis of Van Beneden, S. brasiliensis of the same, S. pallida of Gervais, S. tucaxi of Gray from each other and from S. fluviatilis of Gervais is a matter which is not ripe for decision, barely indeed for discussion. Mr. True thinks that the two marine forms S. guianensis and S. brasiliensis are distinct from the remaining, which are fluviatile. We shall accept what seems to be in itself a reasonable view. Sotalia guianensis of van Beneden equals Sotalia brasiliensis ID is in color black or brown, white below. Teeth 29 to 34. Vertebrae 54 or 55, of which 11 or 12 dorsal. The example of Sotalia brasiliensis studied by van Beneden was a smaller individual than that of S. guianensis, itself a fact tending to throw doubt upon the distinctness of the two forms, considering the minute points of difference which distinguish them. However, Professor van Beneden's coloured figure of S. brasiliensis shows an animal which is largely of a pale brown colour, but this is by no means without the boundaries of colour variation, so little known as must be constantly insisted upon among the whales. Geldy, who has lately reinvestigated the species brasiliensis, thinks that there may be 2 or 3 rudimentary ribs behind the 11 well developed ones. The sternum of the species is formed of 3 pieces, which coalesce later. 5 ribs articulate with the sternum. This species is so common in the Bay of Rio de Janeiro that it is impossible to cross the bay without seeing a few sporting in the immediate neighbourhood of the ship. The old world superstitions regarding the dolphin have been in some curious fashion transferred to this New World form. The natives think that it will bring to shore the bodies of drowned persons. The fact that it is regarded as a sacred animal is rather bad for science, as specimens are hard to obtain. Sotalia pallida, Gervais, probably the same as Steno tucaxi, Gray, and Sotalia fluviatilis, van Beneden and Gervais, has a black colour above and is white or pinkish below. The teeth are 30 in each jaw. As already mentioned, materials do not exist for saying whether there is but one or whether there are 2 or 3 species comprised in the forms here provisionally grouped under one name. It may be that S. pallida is simply pale coloured variety, or there may be, as in Inia QV, a sexual difference of coloration. Sotalia 2Z, Kukenthal, is certainly distinct. It is 8 or 9 feet in length, the nostrils projecting beyond face as a tubular process. This dolphin comes from the Cameroon River, and is another example of a purely freshwater species. It is an exceedingly scarce whale, only one specimen having been seen in as many as 10 years. The prolongation of the nostrils is a most remarkable feature, and is amply sufficient to distinguish the species from any other. Its habits are almost unique, by reason of the fact that it is a vegetable feeder. In the stomachs of some other whales vegetable debris has been found, but in the present species nothing else was found. In accordance with this presumed habit, the teeth are not sharply pointed as in S. sinensis. The animal is rather underjawed, and the skin is described as being especially thick. Of the osteology only the skull is known. The genus Steno has 20 to 27 teeth, which are large, with furrowed surfaces to their crowns. Vertebrae: C. 7, D. 12 or 13, L. 15, Ca. 32 or 30 equals 65 or 66. First two vertebrae fused, rest separate. Pterygoids in contact. The formula of the phalanges is 1, 4, 2, 8, 3, 6, 4, 3, 5, 3. Dorsal and pectoral fins falcate. Beak distinct. Of this genus there are two species, S. perspicillatus and S. rostratus. The former lives in the South Atlantic, the latter is more widely spread. The genus is to be distinguished from Sotalia by the rugose crowns of the teeth, which are smooth in Sotalia, and by the closely approximated pterygoids. Steno-rostratus of Desmarais is in colour purplish sooty black above, sides with yellowish white spots, under surface white, tinged with rose. Teeth 20 to 27. The ribs are 13. Vertebrae 65. This species, if all the synonyms Delphinus frontatus, Cuvier; D. bredanensis, Cuvier; D. planiceps, Schlegel; Steno compressus, Gray; D. reinwarti, Schlegel; D. pernetti, Desmarais. Rightly applied to one species, ranges from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean. It is a largish dolphin, measuring 8 or 9 feet. The remaining species, Steno perspicillatus, Peters, may be thus defined: colour black above, white below, sides yellowish white. A black line from ring round eye joins its fellow on opposite side round forehead. Teeth 23. Ribs 12. Vertebrae 66. This dolphin is rather smaller than the last, about 7 ft. 6 inches, and is confined to South Atlantic. The genus Tursiops has the teeth large, 22 to 26 in number. Vertebral formula: C. 7, D. 12 or 13, L. 16 or 17, Ca. 26 or 27 equals 61 or 64. 5 or 6 ribs two headed. Pterygoids in contact. Phalanges: 1, 1, 2, 6 or 7, 3, 6 or 8, 4, 3, 5, 1 or 2. Fins falcate. Beak distinct. Of this genus, again, the exact number of species is at present a matter of opinion rather than of certainty. Sir W. Flower is doubtful whether there are more than 2. Mr. True allows and defines 5. The genus is universal in range. 10 feet is about the limit of size reached. It seems difficult to give anything like satisfactory definitions of more than the type species. Gray's T. catalania which is allowed by both Sir W. Flower and Mr. True, is mainly to be distinguished by colour. It is said to be a very light lead colour above and on the sides, gradually passing into the dirty leaden white of the lower parts, which were covered, as also the flippers, with longitudinally elongated blotches of dark lead colour. It has 25 teeth in each jaw instead of 23. But are these points to be relied upon as distinguishing it? True thinks that it may be the same as Ruppel's T. abusalam. This whale has the upper surface sea green of a dark hue instead of lead colour. It has 26 teeth and fewer vertebrae, the formula being C7, D12, L16, Ca26 equals 61. It is from the Red Sea, while T. catalania is Australian. As to the difference in the vertebral formula, Mr. True has pointed out that a specimen of T. tursio in the British Museum has but 12 ribs, and another but 61 vertebrae altogether. Its differences from T. tursio are at most but slight. Tursiops tursio, Fabricius, Plate 17, has the upper surface lead colour, under surface white, teeth 23, vertebrae C7, D12 or 13, L17, Ca27 equals 64. This, the only satisfactory type of the genus, is apparently of universal range, specimens having been recorded from our own coasts, rarely, however, North America, New Zealand, Seychelles. The size of this species is some 10 feet, but it has been recorded as reaching 12. Van Beneden mentions that of specimens captured at Arcachon the colour was an intense black, save for a white streak on the ventral surface, which was greyer in the male. The fetus possesses 4 to 7 hairs on each side. The amount to which the cervical vertebrae are fused varies. The two first appear to be always united. Of the following ones, more or fewer are also fused. Sir W. Flower has figured its external characters. Mr. True observes of this whale that its eyelids are as mobile as in the terrestrial Mammalia. The name Tursio is derived from Pliny, but there is no sure ground for identification. The ingenious Bellon would derive Marsouin, a corruption of Meerschwein, from Tursio. But, as Frederick Cuvier justly remarks, we may agree that it would be difficult to place faith in specific analogies founded upon such a system. Delphinus truncatus, Montagu; D. metis, Gray; D. simodici, id; D. eurinum, id, are apparently synonyms. Tursiops catalania, Gray, is in size small, 6 feet and 9 inches. The colour is as in T. tursio, but the sides are covered with blotches of darker colour. Beak relatively longer than in T. tursio. This species, as already said, is admitted by both Sir William Flower and by Mr. True. It is a native of the north-east coast of Australia. The skull only, as far as the skeleton is concerned, is known, but the collector, Mr. John McGillivray, sent home to Dr. Gray careful measurements and a description of the colour of the two specimens which he obtained at localities not far apart. Tursiops abusalam, Rupel, is dark green above, under surface white with dark spots. Teeth 26. Vertebrae D12, L16, C26 equals 61. Beak longer than in T. tursio. This dolphin from the Red Sea does not differ widely from Tursiops catalania, and may very possibly be identical with it. Yet the green colour seems to be characteristic and, as dolphins go, unusual. The number of vertebrae and ribs as a character must be handled with caution, for Mr. True records an undoubted T. tursio with but 12 ribs and 61 vertebrae. Tursiops gilli, the cowfish of Scammon, of which he gives approximate outlines, is black all over, only a little paler below. Though True admits it is a species, it would perhaps be well to wait for further materials before allowing it a place in the system. Certain small marks in the skull lead Mr. True to give it a separate place in the list of existing species of Cetacea. Tursiops parvimanus of Reinhardt is said to differ chiefly by more numerous phalanges of the third digit. Seeing that there is so great a variety in the number of ossifications in the hand, it is not a satisfactory way of defining a species to use this character. The species, moreover, was founded on a single young individual from the Atlantic, another unsatisfactory point if we were to regard it as distinct. Lütken is inclined to suggest an identity with T. catalania. The genus Cephalorhynchus is distinguished by the following assemblage of characters: teeth 25 to 31, small, sharp. Pterygoids widely apart. Premaxillae ridged in front of nasal apertures. Vertebrae 63 to 67. Dorsal fin triangular or ovate. This is a genus of Antarctic dolphins, limited, so far as is known, to the seas about the Cape, New Zealand, and Chile. Their external appearance is suggestive of that of the porpoises, and the form of the pterygoids is much like what is found in the genus Phocena, as also the elevations upon the premaxillae. They have not a beak well marked off from the rest of the head, but this fact of structure has not been incorporated into the generic diagnosis, since in C. hectori there is a hint of one, which is distinctly marked off from the forehead. The small size and non-falcate form of the pectoral limb might perhaps be added as a generic character, but in C. albifrons these limbs are, though small and elongated as in the other species, slightly falcate. Cephalorhynchus hevidcidi, Gray. Plate 18. The first described species of the genus has the pectoral fin elliptical and the dorsal fin triangular. Teeth 25 to 30. Vertebral formula C7, D13, L15, Ca 30 equals 65. Pterygoids short and widely separated. Length about 48 inches. The colour of this dolphin appears to be black, with a good deal of white or pale yellow on the ventral surface. But there is evidently some variation, as F. Cuvier, Marsouin du Cap, is stated to be entirely black, save for a white spot on each side. Sir W. Flower and Mr. True unite these two forms, and the former suggests that Cuvier's species may be a melanic variety of the more typical form. The first 6 pairs of ribs are two-headed, and 5 reach the sternum. Cephalorhynchus albifrons, True, is a changed name for Electra clancula, Hector, and has the pectoral fin falcate and the dorsal fin low and ovate. Teeth 31. Pterygoids long and constricted at base. Length rather over 4 feet. This species, instead of being black, is grey over the greater part of the body. The fins are darker than the trunk. The next species, Cephalorhynchus hectori, van Beneden, has an obtusely pointed pectoral fin. The dorsal fin is low and ovate. The beak is slightly marked. Teeth 30. Vertebrae D14, L15, C 27 equals 63. This New Zealand species is very near to both the last, but the throat and lower jaw are white. It has not the white forehead of C. albifrons. The fourth and last species of the genus Cephalorhynchus eutropia, Gray, equals Eutropia dickey, ID, has 30 teeth in each half of each jaw. Skull larger than in C. heavicidae, with longer and more closely approximated pterygoids. This species is only known from a skull from the coast of Chile. Sir William Flower, as well as Mr. True, pronounce this form to be quite distinct. End of section 22. Recording by Mike Botez. Section 23 of The Book of Whales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mike Botez. The Book of Whales by Frank Evers Beddard. Chapter 10, Part 4. The genus Globicephalus has 7 to 12 teeth on each side, confined to anterior region. Vertebrae C7, D11, L11 to 14, C27 to 29 equals 58 or 59. 6 of the ribs are two-headed. Skull raised into a very long prominence behind blowhole. Pterygoids large and in contact. Pectoral fin long and falcate. Dorsal fin moderately so. The number of phalanges is 1, 3 to 4, 2, 9 to 14, 3, 9 to 11, 4, 2 to 3, 5, 1 to 2. No beak. Very broad premaxillae and rostrum generally. The best known and most widely distributed species is Globicephalus melas, Traill, Plate 19. The colour of the whale is black, save for a white area on breast. Teeth 10. Pterygoids not greatly wider in front than behind. This species has an extremely wide range. It is common in the northern seas, and specimens indistinguishable from those of British waters have been received from New Zealand and the Cape. In a specimen at the British Museum without epiphyses there were 6 cervical vertebrae fused and only 1 free. In a younger individual only 5 were fused. This example is one of many which shows how careful it is necessary to be in using the number of vertebrae of the neck which are fused as a character. Of the 11 ribs, 6 have 2 heads. There are 14 lumbars and 22 caudals. In the older specimen there are altogether 41 lumbocaudals. The phalanges in digits 2 and 3 of the embryo may reach so high a number as 27 and 12 respectively. The formation, therefore, of a species G. propinquus Malm upon a foetus with a greater number of phalanges than the adult G. melas is not permissible. The foetus has a few hairs, 4 or 5. All of the 7 following names are to be looked upon as synonyms: Globicephalus svineval, Gray; G. affinis, ID; G. edwardsi, Smith; G. incrassatus, Gray; Delphinus intermedius, Harlan; D. deductor, Scoresby; D. globiceps, Cuvier. This whale has been largely fished in the Faroe Islands. Mr. H. C. Müller, a native of those islands, has recently gone into the matter and collected a large amount of information, which is here partly abstracted. It appears that the earliest date concerning the appearance of these whales was in the year 1584. This animal is spoken of as Grindeval, a herd being termed Grind, which signifies lattice work. Its application to the whales is apparently the placing of a line of boats across the mouth of a bay where a herd of the Cetaceans has run toward the shore. The results of the fisheries have fluctuated much in the period of years from the date already mentioned. The whales are hunted and captured in the following manner. When a herd is discovered, a piece of garment is hoisted from the mast of the boat. The inhabitants then rush to their boats and, drawing together, shape a half circle round the herd. Stones are thrown into the water, by means of which the herd may be driven in any direction. They are then driven inshore to a whale voe, which is a bay with a level sloping bottom of mud or sand, preferably loose, so that the water becomes muddy and the whales cannot see their way. When the herd has arrived at the mouth of this bay, the boats arrange themselves in 3 lines, so that if one is broken through, the animals may be driven back by the second, and so on. The whales are then killed with lances. The value of an average whale is £3 7s. 6d, of which the oil, 1 barrelful, is estimated at 45s. The meat is dried or pickled, and the stomach is dried and made into buoys. Globicephalus scamoni of Cope has a length of 15 feet some inches. Colour entirely black. Teeth 8. Pterygoids closely approximated and closely addressed. Intermaxillae not projecting over margins of maxillae. This species, which inhabits the North Pacific, is said by Scammon to be generally found wherever sperm whales resort. Probably this is due to their feeding on the same kind of food as their gigantic relatives, to wit, squid. The fish goes in schools from 10 up to hundreds, which sometimes move rapidly and occasionally lie closely huddled together at the surface. It seems to be necessary to state that this whale is called blackfish, for so many whales are called by this exceedingly obvious name. It is not considered a prize by whalers, for its oil is not abundant. Globicephalus brachypterus, also of Cope, is in colour entirely black. Teeth 8. Premaxillae greatly expanded anteriorly, covering maxillae. This Atlantic species is of the form and size of the Ka-ing whale. It may show a difference in the number of lumbar vertebrae, which are stated at 11, but the commencement of the caudal series being marked by the first chevron, which bones are very apt to be lost, it is a little difficult to be certain upon this point. The total number of vertebrae is given at 57, one or two less than the numbers ascertained for G. melas. Other reputed species are G. sieboldii, which in Schlegel's drawing has a very different aspect from G. melas, being of a more slender build with a very falcate dorsal fin. G. macrorhynchus of Gray, and of unknown locality and unknown form. What is known about it is the skull. Globicephalus indicus of Blyth is allowed by Blanford as a distinct form. It has 6 to 7 teeth on each side above and 7 to 8 below. The premaxillae are broad and entirely cover maxilla. Its colour is a uniform leaden black. The length is 14 feet 2 inches. The animal goes in shoals, and frequents the Gangetic delta. The genus Tursio must be carefully distinguished from Tursiops. Its characters are: beak distinct, no dorsal fin; teeth small and numerous, 44; pterygoids separate. It is a pity that the name Tursio antedates Leucorhamphus, since Tursio is so evidently suggestive of Tursiops, to which genus the present is not so nearly allied as it is to Prodelphinus. The name of right whale porpoise has been applied to the dolphins of this genus on account, of course, of the absence of the dorsal fin. The northern T. borealis seems to be only distinguishable from the southern T. peroni by its slightly different coloration. This does not appear to be a sufficient reason for separating them. But the matter will not be decided here. The species Peroni has a wide range, and is black above and white beneath, the colours joining abruptly. It is southern in range, Antarctic in fact, though ranging as far north as New Guinea. The genus Grampus (Plate XX) has no teeth in upper jaw, but 3 to 7 on each side of the mandible near to the symphysis. Vertebrae: C7, D12, L19, Ca 30 = 68. 6 or 7 pairs of ribs, two-headed. 5 pairs, sometimes 7, reach the sternum. Skull with pterygoids in contact. Premaxillae in front of nares raised. No beak. Pectoral fin long, pointed, falcate. Dorsal fin high and falcate. Number of phalanges: 1, 2. 2, 8 to 10. 3, 6 to 8. 4, 3. 5, 1. In the vertebral column only the seventh vertebra of the cervical series appears to remain free. The only species is Grampus griseus, Cuvier; D. rizoanus, Desmarais; Grampus cuvieri, Gray; G. soverbianus, Fisher; G. sakamata, Gray; G. stearnsi, Dahl; G. chinensis, Gray, are believed really to refer to the same whale. This dolphin, often called Risso's dolphin, is mainly Mediterranean and North Atlantic in range. But, like so many other Cetaceans, its limits are not very fixed, and a skull, conceivably belonging to a different species, has been recorded from the Cape. It may return to those more southern latitudes during the winter. Risso's dolphin is from 10 to 13 feet in length, and is distinguished by its very remarkable coloration. The prevalent tint is grey, varying on the fins and tail to black, and to white on the belly. This white has a yellowish tinge anteriorly, but the curious feature of the coloration is a series of irregular light streaks and spots, suggestive of scraping upon wet paint. In a younger individual the sides were marked with 6 regular transverse stripes. This animal, only 6 feet in length, had 8 whitish bristles on each side of the upper lip. This is not by any means a common Cetacean. Only a dozen records of its capture upon the English and French coasts are extant. It feeds upon cuttlefish and is gregarious. The genus Orca (Plate XXI) has 10 to 13 teeth, large, with recurved crowns. Pterygoids not quite meeting. Vertebrae: C7, D11 to 12, L10, Ca 23 = 51 or 52. First 2 or 3 cervicals fused. The first 7 ribs are two-headed. 5 reach the sternum. Dorsal fin large and pointed. The killer whales Tyrannus balaenarum, Formidabilis balaenarum hostis, sometimes called Grampus, are the largest among the Delphinidae, reaching a length of 20 to 30 feet. They are powerful, rapacious animals, and are the only whales that feed upon their own kind and upon large prey. It is perhaps not necessary to believe with an old writer that a killer has been seen with a seal under each flipper, a third tucked away under the dorsal fin, and a fourth in the mouth. But it is stated by Eschricht that from the stomach of one of these fierce whales no less than 13 porpoises and 14 seals were extracted. Scammon relates how they may sometimes be seen peering above the surface, with a seal in their bristling jaws, shaking and crushing their victims, apparently with great gusto, and swallowing them. A party of killers will also assault the largest whales. Scammon related an attack of this nature upon a California grey whale which he witnessed. They made alternate assaults upon the old whale and her offspring, finally killing the latter, which sank to the bottom, where the water was 5 fathoms deep. During the struggle the mother became nearly exhausted, having received several deep wounds above the throat and lips. As soon as their prize had settled to the bottom, the 3 orcas descended, bringing up large pieces of flesh in their mouths, which they devoured after coming to the surface. The ferocity, or at any rate the boldness, of this predaceous cetacean is also attested to by His Highness the Prince of Monaco. 2 years ago, the Prince writes, I chased a school of 3 of these just off the Monaco rock, and very soon one was struck by my whaler's harpoon. While it was ending with violent struggles, the 2 others came alongside the whale boat, and seemed willing to fight for their companion. They swarmed round and round, sometimes so close that the men touched their enormous backs with their hands. It has been said that the long and pointed dorsal fin is used for aggressive purpose to rip up the belly of a whale. The Honourable Paul Dudley thus describes the attacks of the killers upon whalebone whales. They go in company by dozens and set up a young whale, and will bait him like so many bulldogs. Some will lay hold of his tail to keep him from thrashing, while others lay hold of his head and bite and thrash him, till the poor creature, being thus heated, lolls out his tongue, and then some of the killers catch hold of his lips and, if possible, of his tongue, and after they have killed him they chiefly feed upon the tongue and head, but when he begins to putrefy they leave him. This killer is doubtless the Orca that Dr. Frangius describes in his Treatise of Animals. His words are these: when an Orca pursues a whale, the latter makes a terrible bellowing, like a bull when bitten by a dog. These killers are of such strength that, when several boats together have been towing a dead whale, one of them has come and fastened his teeth in her and carried her away down to the bottom in an instant. In more northern regions the Orca pursues the white whale and the walrus. Not indeed the adult walrus, whose strong tusks may be supposed to be a sufficient protection. It is the young that the killer hunts. The cub will mount upon its mother's back for refuge, clinging to it with instinctive solicitude. When in this apparently safe position, the rapacious Orca quickly dives and coming up under the parent animal with a spiteful thud, throws the young one from the dams back into the water, when in a twinkling it is seized, and with one crush devoured by its enemy. These observations refer to the killer whales in general. A large number of different species have been described, or at least named. But, observes Sir W. Flower, their specific differential characters, if any, have never been clearly defined. We shall not, therefore, attempt any discrimination of species. These have been partly founded upon the varying length of the dorsal fin, and upon the colour, which is black more or less, pervaded with white blotches, yellow in V. Benneden's figure. The typical Orca gladiator has much white about the body, and an excellent model of this cetacean, agreeing with Mr. True's figure of this whale, has been set up in the Natural History Museum at South Kensington. It is a whale that has been frequently met with upon our shores, and a few years since a herd of 3 ascended the Thames for some distance. It occurs also in all parts of the world. It is quite possible that there are several species of this genus, but probably the bulk of the dozen or so of species allowed by Dr. Gray have no existence save in his and in other catalogues. It is probable, according to F. Cuvier, that this whale is the Ares marinus of the ancients, possibly the horrible sea satyr of Edmund Spenser, for the white marks on the head might be fancifully interpreted as closely adpressed horns. The genus Pseudorca is thus definable: teeth 8 to 10, much like those of Orca; rostral portion of premaxillae broader than in Orca; vertebral formula C7, D10, L9, Ca24 = 50. 6 or all cervicals united. 6 ribs two-headed. Dorsal fin rather small, falcate. There is but a single recognized species, which is Pseudorca crassidens, Owen. This whale reaches a length of about 14 feet. It was originally described from a skull found in the Lincolnshire fens, and was naturally supposed to be an extinct species. But afterwards it was discovered to live in the North Sea, and a species at first regarded as distinct, P.S. meridionalis, was received from Tasmanian seas. The whale is scarce, and there is not very much to be said about it. It is not precisely evident why systematists have thought fit to remove it from the genus Orca, to which it is clearly very closely allied. The genus Orcella is thus characterized: teeth 14 to 19, small, sharp; pterygoids widely separate; rostral position of premaxillae broad; vertebral formula D14, L14, C26 = 61; 7 ribs two-headed; 5 ridge sternum; no beak; dorsal fin small, falcate. Of this genus there is really but one species, Orcella brevirostris, Owen. Head convex anteriorly; pectoral fins triangular; dorsal fin small, falcate. The present species is a partly freshwater form, and occurs in the Irrawaddy 3 to 900 miles from the sea. It is also marine. I unite the two species, which True regards as separate, on the authority of Mr. Thomas, who has recently examined the material. The genus Sagmattias has the premaxillae elevated into a crest in front of nostrils, pterygoids short, scarcely or not at all touching, teeth small, 32. Of this genus but a single species, S. amblodon, is known, and that only, as will be observed from the definition, from a single skull described by the late Professor Cope. But the singular crest formed by the elevation of the premaxillae is a character which seems to be in the present state of our knowledge of generic value. It is, however, met with in Phocena. The genus Pheresa need hardly detain us long. It is only known from two skulls with 10 to 12 teeth in each half of each jaw, both assigned now to the same species, F. intermedia. One was described as F. attenuata. Sir W. Flower describes it as a connecting link between Globiceps, Grampus, and Lagenorhynchus. It must not be confounded with the very doubtful Delphinus pheres of Bonaterre, which has been variously interpreted as an orca or as a Ziphiid. End of section 23. Recording by Mike Botez. Section 24 of The Book of Whales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mike Botez. The Book of Whales by Frank Evers Beddard. Chapter 11. Anomalous Dolphins. Family Platanistidae. We can define this family by the following characteristics: cervical vertebrae all free, and individually of considerable length; jaws long and narrow, with a considerable extent of symphysis and numerous teeth; lacrymal bones not distinct from jugal; pectoral limbs large; phalanges of digits few in number. This undoubtedly ancient family of dolphin-like Cetacea would be more easily definable if we could eject Pontoporia, which is very distinctly nearer to the true dolphins than are either of the following remaining genera, Platanista and Inia. This, indeed, is done by Gray, who does actually relegate Pontoporia to the dolphins, making a separate family for the two other genera, a family, that is to say, for each of them. Sir William Flower was content with urging the adoption of sub-family rank for each of the forms Platanista and Inia, avoiding the placing of Pontoporia, which was not thoroughly known at the time when he wrote upon these forms as it is now. The genus Platanista may be thus distinguished from its allies. There is no dorsal fin. The pectorals are large and truncated at the extremity. Teeth not so numerous as in Inia, some 29 in each half of each jaw. Scapula with the acromion coinciding with the anterior margin of the bone, and a rudimentary coracoid process only. In the skull there are enormous maxillary crests. The most remarkable feature of the cervical region of the spinal column is the independence and the comparatively great thickness of the individual vertebrae. There is a fairly strong marked odontoid process on the axis, a very rare feature in whales. The thoracic vertebrae are locked together in a way which is also peculiar to Platanista among whales, but the mode of attachment of the ribs is on the whole like that of Inia. The first 7 of these are attached to the transverse process of their own vertebrae and to the centra of the vertebra in front. There are 8 lumbar vertebrae. The sternal ribs, as in Inia, are cartilaginous. The sternum is not so modified as that of Inia. It consists of 3 pieces placed end to end, of which the middle one, at any rate, shows traces of its double origin by a suture running down it longitudinally. To the sternum 4 ribs are attached. The main peculiarity of the scapula, quite unique among whales, has been pointed out in the definition of the genus. As in Inia, the humerus is unusually long. The most remarkable feature in the skull, not even excepting the extraordinary maxillary crests, is the condition of the palatines. These do not enter into the formation of the bony palate, but are concealed by the pterygoids. Platanista gagentica, the species named by Lebeck, the long-snouted dolphin of the Ganges, is limited to that river and to its branches, and to the Indus and its branches. It appears never to leave the streams for the sea. Its food is chiefly fish and prawns, and it is believed largely to grub about in the river mud to obtain its food. The diminutive eyes render pursuit of an active prey at least difficult, but the whale makes up for these defective organs of vision, as is elsewhere the case in the animal world, by a sensitive beak. Grain has been found in the stomach of this dolphin, but Dr. Anderson believes that its presence is accidental and not deliberately caused by the dolphin. The most generally used vernacular term for this cetacean is susu. This and some of the other expressions used by natives in different parts of its range are onomatopoetic words intended to imitate the sound made during spouting. As everything that breathes seems to form the food of some tribe or individuals, it is unnecessary to state that the susu is devoured by many natives. The animal may reach a length of 9.5 feet, but it is not usually so large. As to the external characters, the most striking point which would be at first noticed is the existence of a distinct neck. Its long snout is curiously suggestive of that of the gavial of the same region of the world. The next genus, Inia, has only a rudimentary dorsal fin, but large ovate pectorals. The teeth have often a distinct additional tubercle. The maxillary crests are not largely developed. The palatines are separated in the middle line by the vomer. Scapula normal. This genus, like Platanista, includes but a single species. The genus itself is in some respects the most central type of the Platanistidae. It is much more undolphin-like than Pontoporia, but not so highly abnormal in the bulk of its characters as is Platanista. The skeleton of this whale has been described by Sir W. Flower from a specimen in the British Museum. The skull is very slightly asymmetrical. It is crested behind the nares, the vertex being formed by the frontals. There is no distinct lacrymal bone. The maxillae are narrow and excavated by the premaxillae in a way paralleled in Pentoporia, but not found among the dolphins. The palatines are separated from each other by the vomer, and the pterygoids are nearly in contact. The mandible presents a remarkable miniature resemblance to that of a cachalot. Its most remarkable feature is the great length of the symphysis. The vertebrae are very few, only 41 in all, which are thus distributed: C 7, D 13, L 3, Ca 18 = 41. The neck, as in Platanista, is particularly long, and for the matter of that distinguishable externally. This is due to the relatively great length and complete separation from each other of all of the cervicals, an uncommon state of affairs in toothed Cetacea, but found in Platanista, Beluga, and Monodon. There is a faint indication of the odontoid process to the axis, more developed in Platanista. The dorsal vertebrae have high and erect spines. There are both anterior and posterior zygapophyses on the first 9, anterior zygapophyses only on the 10th and 11th. The transverse process begins to be divided into transverse process proper and metapophyses on the 5th dorsal. The former gradually move up towards the anterior zygapophyses, which they entirely supersede on the 12th vertebra. The latter processes move down and become, on the 9th, fused with the process of the centrum, to which the capitular head of the rib is attached. The arrangement of these tubercles and processes of the vertebrae is related to a singular disposition of the ribs, which is unique among Cetaceans, and is more like that of the cachalot and Ziphioid whales. The anterior vertebrae have a process springing from the neural arch for the tubercular attachment of the rib. Between each two vertebrae, half on each, is a facet for the capitular attachment of the rib. In the 5th vertebra the facet is confined to the anterior edge of the body of that vertebra, and therefore on this vertebra and those following each rib is solely attached to its own vertebra. As far as the 7th each rib has a double attachment, but on the 8th or 9th the two facets of insertion have, as already mentioned, coalesced. From this point, therefore, the ribs are single-headed. In having only 3 lumbar vertebrae, Inia is remarkable among whales. It is a point of likeness to the Sirenia. These vertebrae are compressed and ridged below. There seem to be 11 chevron bones. The ribs are 13 pairs, the sternal ribs being cartilaginous as in the Physeteridae. It is possible that only 2 pairs of these reach the sternum, which will be, if confirmed, another small point of likeness to the Sirenia. The sternum itself is not unlike that of a Manatee. It is a single bone, oval in outline, with a deep anterior notch. In the whalebone whales the sternum also consists of a single piece. The scapula, unlike that of Platanista, is not aberrant, but conforms to the ordinary dolphin pattern. Both acromion and coracoid are long. The humerus is unusually long, a clearly unspecialized character, and longer than the radius or ulna, the reverse being the case in other Cetacea. The hand has 5 carpals beside the pisiform. The formula of the phalanges is this: 1, 1, 2, 5, 3, 4, 4, 2, 5, 2. The teeth of Inia are from 104 to 132, the formula being 26 to 32 by 26 to 32. The teeth, as in Steno, are markedly rugose on the crowns. They also show a very important character in the approach to the complex teeth of terrestrial carnivores, in the presence of a supplementary lobe to the hinder teeth. The only species is Inia geoffrensis, with the synonyms Delphinus amazonicus, Spix and Martius, Inia boliviensis, d'Orbigny, D. Geoffrey, Desmarais. This dolphin frequents the Amazons, and reaches an extreme length of 8 feet. It has a striking coloration, as well as a considerable amount of variability, which, it may be incidentally remarked, throws doubt upon other identification of Cetaceans by colour alone. According to the most recent observer of this species, Mr. E. E. Austen, it is either wholly pink or flesh coloured, or else entirely black, or black above and pink beneath. Individuals of the different colours are to be seen in company, and it may be that the difference of colour is sexual. The late Mr. Bates, however, denied that the two sets of individuals were intermingled, so the matter must be regarded for the present as unsettled. As to the colour, it is remarkable that there are other examples of pale coloured river dolphins, e.g. Sotalia sinensis, a circumstance which must make us pause before accepting the view that the white hue of the Arctic Beluga is protective in its nature. The rostrum of this dolphin is beset with scattered stiff hairs, and the dorsal fin is rudimentary, being reduced to a mere ridge. The native name of the animal is Buto, and there are legends to the effect that it will attack a man in the water, while the species of Sotalia, found in the same river, will endeavour to protect him, the two animals thus playing respectively the roles of the jaguar and the puma, according to Mr. Hudson. In any case the natives fear the dolphin, and cannot be induced to harpoon it. Nor will they use the oil, for fear that it should bring them bad luck. It is curious that another river dolphin in quite another part of the world, the river pig of Canton (Sotalia sinensis), is, according to the Rev. H. Friend, looked upon as a creature of ill omen, and on that account its name is tabooed. There is also, according to the late Mr. H. W. Bates, a legend that this dolphin of the Amazons assumes the shape of a beautiful woman and perambulates the river banks. Meeting with an impressionable young man in that torrid region, and enticing him by the aspect of her long hair hanging loose at her heels, she inveigles him near the bank and disappears with him beneath the waves. It is stated that such legends, and they abound in the region, are not native at all, but introduced by the Portuguese. Professor Agassiz, also having, after some difficulty, secured a specimen of this dolphin, found that when it finally arrived into his possession it was sadly mutilated by reason of the superstitious reverence that attached to its eyes and other parts of its anatomy. Genus Pontoporia. Dorsal fin falcate. Teeth very numerous, over 200. Articulation of ribs as in dolphins. Sternum in two pieces. Scapula as in Inia. Palatines separated in the middle line by the vomer. I retain this genus, of which the proper name is really Stenodelphis, but Pontoporia is so much more familiar, in the family Platanistidae, on account of its long and beak-like jaws, the numerous small teeth, and the general similarity of its nearly symmetrical skull to that of Inia. It was thus placed provisionally by Sir William Flower after an examination of the skull only. Since Sir W. Flower wrote, the late Professor Burmeister has described the other bones and certain of the viscera. The facts thus discovered are not so strongly in favour of the Platanistid affinities of Pontoporia. But though it may be regarded as leaning towards the dolphins, there can be no great harm in leaving it for the present in the family Platanistidae. The 7 cervical vertebrae are all free, as in other Platanistids. There are 10 dorsal vertebrae only. Burmeister gives also 7 lumbars and 18 caudals, this bringing up the total number of vertebrae to 42. I find the same total number in a specimen in the British Museum, but allow only 5 lumbars, the rest being caudals. My enumeration must be accepted if we are to allow the presence of the first chevron bone to mark the commencement of the caudal series. This whale, therefore, is a dolphin-like in the greater number of the lumbar vertebrae, that is, of course, as compared with Inia. The sternum consists of 2 pieces which are ossified. Burmeister mentions a cartilaginous piece between. The hinder half of the sternum was divided longitudinally into 2 halves. The British Museum specimen appeared to be adult. There are 10 pairs of ribs, of which I found the first 3 pairs to be double-headed. The ribs in this genus are not like those of Inia, but like those of dolphins. That is to say, the single-headed ribs suddenly begin, they lose their capitular attachment, and have only the tubercular; there is no fusion between the 2 heads, as in Inia. But other examples of Cetacea (cf. Kogia and Physeter) teach us that this is not a difference of first-rate importance. Burmeister states that there are 4 ribs, i.e. 4 pairs, with a double attachment to the vertebral column. The scapula of this dolphin is normal in the region of the acromion, as in Cetacea generally, but not as in Platanista. 4 pairs of ribs appear to join the sternum, of which the last pair, however, are attached by a ligament only. The sternal ribs in front of this seem to be ossified. Burmeister distinctly states that they are. The skull of Pontoporia is very symmetrical as compared with other dolphins. Its surface is very flat, not ridged behind the nares like that of Inia. The palatines, moreover, do not cover the vomer, a point of likeness to Inia. The symphysis of the mandible is long, and the teeth are estimated by Sir W. Flower to be as many as 221 in all. Pontoporia blainvilli, Gervais. As there is, so far as we know, but a single species of this dolphin-like Platanistid, it is unnecessary, and indeed impossible, to give it a satisfactory definition. The colour was stated by M. de Fremville, who brought home the original skull upon which the genus and the species were founded, to be white with a black dorsal band. D'Orbigny described another dolphin which he thought, but without any evidence, to be the same species. As this evidence is wanting, it will be unnecessary to repeat his description. Mr. Lydekker, on the other hand, has described it as a palish brown, harmonizing with the brown coloured water of the estuary of the Amazons and the Rio de la Plata. Extinct Platanistids. More generic types have been described as belonging to this group of Cetacea than to any other, and it is furthermore remarkable as being the only existing group that goes back to the far past of the Eocene period. Indeed, apart from the Zeuglodonts, these whales are the only ones that have so ancient a history. But, as is often the case, their remains are for the most part fragmentary, and not much of great importance has been or apparently can be deduced from their study. The restricted range of the existing Platanistidae is in the interesting harmony with the great antiquity of the race. It is so often the case that a rapidly dwindling group of animals consists of existing forms which occupy very limited areas. It is as if the long continuance of the types in question had rendered them partially effete and unable to cope with the changed conditions and new forms allied to themselves. In order to survive, they had to creep into corners where the tide of Cetacean life does not enter. It is often held that the original terrestrial ancestors of the whales gradually adopted the marine life by first taking to rivers and then gradually passing through estuaries to the sea. It is alleged that these very Platanistids, being largely fresh water in range themselves, furnished such a proof of the way in which the ancestors of the whales changed to an aquatic from a land life. For they present, as has been pointed out, certain archaic points of structure, and are fresh water in habitat. There is, however, no a priori reason why the original whale should not have boldly plunged into salt water at once, without gradually accustoming himself to the change. For we have the sea otter as an instance of a land animal frequenting the waters of the sea, and, furthermore, the remains of extinct Platanistids are from definitely marine strata. The question, indeed, is one upon which guesses alone are possible. Seeing that the Platanistids represented at any rate by the genus Iniopsis go back as far in time as the Zeuglodonts, we might expect to find some approximation in structure between these two tribes, nearer than that which obtains between the Zeuglodonts and others. There are, however, so few apparent points at which the two groups touch that it seems necessary to look upon the two as independently evolved from some more ancient form, and to regard the Zeuglodont type as having culminated in the later Squalodonts and then to have become extinct. There are, however, two genera assigned by Cope to the Platanistids which approach Zeuglodon in one point, and that is in the length of the cervical vertebrae. These are Zarachis and Priscodelphinus. This character, however, as it seems to us, is rather one that betokens antiquity than one which points in any particular direction. The general tendency of whales of every group to lose their teeth is exhibited in these old Platanistidae. The genus Rhabdosteus has teeth at the base of the maxillary only. In Agabellus the teeth seem to have entirely vanished, leaving only an alveolar groove, which may perhaps have contained rudimentary teeth like those now found in the upper jaw of Physeter and Ziphioids. Some other facts dealing with fossil members of this group will be found at page 209. End of section 24. Recording by Mike Botez.
Section 25 of The Book of Whales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nichalia. The Book of Whales by Frank Evers BEDDARD. Chapter 12. Zeuglodonts and their allies. Family, Squalodontidae. This family, consisting entirely of extinct forms, may be thus defined. Teeth in both jaws specialized into incisors, canines, premolars, and molars. Skull, dolphin-like. These whales, whose remains are known from the Miocene and Pliocene of Europe, America, and Australia, form a connecting link between the Zeuglodonts, with which group they have been united, and the modern Odontocetes. Like the Zeuglodonts, the teeth are specialized. And, moreover, the molars have a coarsely serrate cutting edge, like the Zeuglodont tooth, but the serrations are confined to one side. The teeth, too, are more numerous, though some of them are two-rooted, as in Zeuglodon. The archaic characters of the Squalodontidae are also shown by the fact that a number of the teeth of the upper jaw are borne by the premaxilla. The skull, however, apart from this feature, is not archaic, and the rudimentary nasals of modern cetaceans have been acquired. In Prosqualodon, however, this process has not been fully completed, and there are small nasals which just project over the nasal vacuities. The symphysis of the mandible of Squalodon is very long, thus recalling the Platanistids and Fiester. These whales, which did not exceed some 30 feet in length, have been divided into numerous genera, but as little is known of the skeleton, this proceeding is at present rather premature. Cope, however, allows another genus in addition to those mentioned, and that is Trirhizodon, characterized by the fact that some of the molars are three-rooted. Archaeoceti. This, the last of the three divisions of whales, embraces only a single family, and so far as can be said with certainty, only a single genus, Zeuglodon. It is usually regarded as an assemblage equivalent to either of the other groups, and this view will be followed here, but the differences in structure might fairly be considered as entitling it to a more isolated position among the Cetacea. Nevertheless, there is no question of the cetaceous nature of the Zeuglodon. It is quite possible, however, that the zeuglodonts are the ancestral group from which the Odontoceti and the Mystacoceti have been derived. But this view, a very general one, cannot be elaborated in detail. We shall simply find an example of what is so disappointingly general when an attempt is made to trace pedigrees in animals. The Archaeoceti are toothed whales, but whereas in the Odontocetes the teeth are all alike, with merely difference in size, the teeth of the present group are like those of more typical mammals, in being distinctly separable into 3 series. There are 3 incisors on each side of the jaw, and those of the upper jaw are borne by the premaxillae, the bone which bears the incisors in mammals generally. Behind the junction of the premaxilla with the maxilla is a definite canine, and behind this again 5 teeth, which are no doubt both molars and premolars, though there is no positive evidence of a double dentition in the zeuglodonts. It will be noted, too, that the total number of teeth, 36, is that of many mammals. The skull is elongated like that of whales in general, and, as in other whales, the snout is long. The frontal bones come down over the orbit, as in all whales, but the nasals are long and ordinarily mammalian. The result of this latter arrangement is that the blowhole was in the middle of the snout instead of at its base, as in all whales except Pfiester, where, it will be remembered, there is a canal embedded in the soft tissues of the head, leading to the extremity of the snout. It is the whalebone whales, among living cetacea, which have best preserved the form of the nasal bones of zeuglodon. Other bones of the skull, besides the nasals, are not upon the cetacean plan. The premaxillae take a large share, as has been already implied, in the formation of the gape. The parietals, which in existing whales have no lot or part in forming the top of the skull, meet in these ancient whale-like creatures to form a sagittal crest upon the vertex. The cervical vertebrae, as in the ancient Platanistidae, and in a few only of other existing cetacea, are separate. They are, moreover, not compressed antero-posteriorly, as are those of recent whales, but are not different in length from the succeeding vertebra. The scapula is not typically cetaceous, since it has but a small coracoid process and a large acromion. The ribs are double-headed, like the anterior series of the toothed whales. The sternum, too, is constructed upon the plan that characterizes the Odontoceti, being composed of several pieces. If the Archaeoceti are the most primitive of whales, it must be among them that the clue to the relationship of the whales will be found. This is a topic, however, about which more has been written than ascertained. The only view that demands a notice here, for we cannot, of course, accept any ichthyosaurian descent for these animals, is the opinion held by 1 or 2 persons that the zeuglodonts are most nearly related to seals. The facts upon which these comparisons have been based are principally the characters of the teeth, the long neck, like that of a seal in proportions, the scapula without the typical whale-like form. All these points are just so far seal-like as they are generalized characters. All mammals except the cetacea, and to a less extent the Sirenia, have moderately long cervical vertebra. Included in this series are, of course, the seals. It is likely that whales have been derived from animals with this more typical mammalian arrangement. There is certainly one family only, and probably but a single genus of this group of whales. The remains of this have been found in many parts of the world, indicating that its distribution was like that of most cetacea of the present day, wide. This genus was one of the great whales, and reached a length of certainly 70 feet. The best-known species is Zeuglodon cetoides, but in spite of the abundance of its remains, no complete skeleton has ever been got together. End of section 25. And end of the Book of Whales by Frank Evers Beddard.